Quad 66. All right, I'm getting this new build dialed in to the point where I think it's time to kind of show a little bit. So this specifically is being built around the HDZero AIO 15 board. So that's their 15 amp 2 to 3S. It's got built-in HDZero, obviously. On the VTX, it also has built-in Express LRS, and that is coming in through the serial rather than the SPI. So really promising board because it brought the weight down for all of that equipment to where we can jump down to a smaller prop size. So here, these are the GemFan 2520 props. HQ also has a nice prop too. It's their 3x2x3, I think, or something along those lines. Similar pitch, and it's specifically the V2. The V1 was horrible. V2 is good. And I've got it built up with the T-Motor 1104s. They're 7,500 kV. And I'm flying this on a GNB 552S. And this makes for a really compelling little backyard package. The weight that this comes in, this right now, as it's built, is coming in at 53 grams, but obviously it's carrying a little bit extra luggage with the open logger on there, so drop a gram, maybe a gram and a half off for that, and that brings it in very similar weight to an analog version. Now, the analog board is a little bit older board, so it's not having all the advantages of all-in-one stuff with everything built in. But this is an old Flywoo board's F411. It was a 12 amp ESCs, and this flew incredibly well. But when I tried to put the other HDZero there, the mini, whatever they called it, I don't know, this system, their little 1S style board, and flying it in particular with the Nano 90 camera, which I like a lot. It's this platform with the 2.5 inch props really just didn't carry it. It didn't tolerate it very well. But this was an incredible flyer on analog, and so I was really curious when the new HDZero board came in to be able to like rebuild it and see how it did. And short story is, it's excellent. There's some quirks to the board, so I ranted a little bit about the motor pad soldering. It's doable, but I kind of like get taken aback when people are like, oh, it's fine, I did it, no problem. Well, yeah, if you've got some pretty good soldering skills and you've got a magnifier, it's doable. But is it pleasant? Is it like something you want to do on a regular basis? No. Is it something that I would recommend for somebody new to it? Absolutely not. That's not a lot of space. And particularly when you're throwing bigger motors with bigger wires on there, it's challenging. This is clearly designed for kind of whoop motors, and I'm using it a little bit outside what it's designed for, but I think this is a much more compelling package than like a little 2S whoop. That's my opinion. Obviously, people are going to vary on that. I've made some changes specifically to this frame. Obviously, this one over here was like a Warpig, and I've got the TPU style canopy. But I wanted to address some of the things that kind of annoyed me a little bit with that. So some of the things I wanted to do was, I don't know. I specifically wanted to use a battery strap. I wanted to move away from any kind of like TPU or rubber band kind of mounting. And I wanted this nice secure battery strap on there. And that's part of where the extra weight comes from. So this being 53 grams all up weight for this one dressed up as is. I think it'll come down to like 52, maybe 51 without the open logger, versus the analog build, which is coming in right at 50 grams dry weight. You throw on a 2S battery, that brings you up to about 70 grams all up weight. But I did want to do the battery strap, and so to make this a little bit more battery strap compatible, I put in these little bars here. They actually need to be moved in a little bit. The spacing here is actually good for 3S rather than 2S, so I'm going to bring that in a little bit. Then the other part I wanted to do was with the Warpig, the battery strap, the canopy, prints flat, but and it works really well. But one of the annoying things about it was you got to like put the camera mount, the canopy on first before you screw the board in if you're keeping it in this diamond orientation. And I wanted to move away from that. And so I went to a little bit different design where this now keys in. So on the front of this slot, on the front of the frame, you can see 2 screw holes and then kind of this open box. And rather than using the same screw hole that the flight controller is going to mount to, you have 2 separate nylon screws. I've always kind of like tried to avoid that in the past. You know, I like to minimize excess things, but I really think that this is going to work better in terms of quality of life. So a couple of nylon screws, a couple of nylon nuts, and then it keys in to get the sturdiness. So you're not relying just on the nuts, but you're relying on kind of the way this keys in that way. And then you use the flex, the tension in the TPU to get the sturdiness into the camera mount, and then come backwards. And here we're using the flight controller stack screws. In this case, this is a little bit longer than I intend them to. I intend them to be shorter, but the way this canopy, I got to adjust the holes a little bit. If I push it all the way down, it gives me a little too much camera tilt, more than I want, and so it is kind of where it is right now. But on this one, rather than my usual nylon screws to be able to secure this mount down, you probably need the length out of going to a metal screw like an aluminum screw. To use the battery strap, one of the things we had to do is get the screws out of the way. And so what I did in this particular frame is I used a flathead screw and I countersunk the holes there so that it's flat, so the battery can sit flat. The problem I found though was I don't have a lot of material here naturally, and so this kind of chipped and cracked. So I still need to make some adjustments to make this bigger so that you can countersink that if that's how you want to go. The other thing that'll work too is if you want to use a regular button head screw, is you can basically kind of use a little riser, effectively kind of put a little TPU down or something like that to create a little riser to clear those screw heads, and I think those are going to be the 2 options there. So the frame otherwise, you know, obviously pretty similar to a Warpig, just slightly modified. Some of the features of the Warpig, if you're not familiar with it, some of the things I do to like maximize the performance of the frame is very carefully kind of tapered frame, tapered arms, so that when they break, they tend to break all over the place instead of at one stress riser. Also, flaring them out a little bit helps control the noise a little bit, keeps it out of the oscillation. A straight arm is going to oscillate more at lower pitches versus when you taper, you're kind of pushing that flex point a little bit further out. So if it oscillates, it should be a little bit higher pitch and a little bit easier to filter. I think I'm going to beef this up just a tiny bit more. I'm going to make those arms a little bit wider, but I'm anticipating weight-wise, let me get a weight on this. I think weight-wise, the frame is going to come in. Yeah, this one's just under, this is 6.8 grams, so it'll be like a 7-gram frame. You know, maybe a little less, a little bit more, a little bit less, but somewhere in the 7-gram range. And then the canopy should be pretty light. I don't have one to weigh just right sitting in front of me. But before we kind of do the final release, we'll do that. So I think what I'll do is I'll have the frame available through CNC drones, or you can, I think I might also offer just the file to buy on the coffee site, and then, you know, the file for the canopy will be free, so you can get it printed up, either print it yourself or print it out. Some of the things on the all-in-one board, you know, we kind of talked about those battery leads. Other things are antenna. I actually ended up replacing mine. I thought that the board was having some reception issues. As it turns out, it was just too much demand on the CPU. So for whatever reason, the way this board manifests overloading the CPU is it turns the frame rate on the receiver to garbage. I don't know why, it just does. But it really causes some major problems there. So what's interesting about that is I was logging both of these quads at 2K. The F411 board, we're overclocking to 120 hertz. The G4 board on the HDZero is standard at 170 hertz. I thought extra 50 hertz, I've got plenty of, or it's more than hertz, it's like megahertz or something like that. Anyways, I thought I had plenty of headroom because it was like a good, what is it, we said 120 versus 170? Yeah, so an extra 50 of headroom. But I guess maybe something about the implementation of the way HDZero is doing this. It's using more processing power somewhere. I don't know where, but somewhere. And what that leads to is that it was causing some really CPU issues. And everything magically cleaned up. Ultimately, what I figured out was overclocking this. So this one right now, I've been running overclocked to 216. I think it's megahertz, 216 megahertz. Running at 216, all those problems cleaned up. So that was kind of interesting. And I haven't seen any problems with the Express LRS on this. I haven't seen the reception is great. Just running at 25 milliwatts, 50, yeah, I think 25 milliwatts, right? That's what we run them at. The lower setting, not the 200, the VTX, I'm getting great reception with just a little whip, antenna, which is nice. So I'll do some things with integrating on the canopy, like the Whoop 66 camera canopy, where we've got a little hole to put the VTX antenna through. And then I'll probably put one also over here. I think it's less logical, but just for symmetry, I'll put it over there in case you want to run the receiver antenna out or something like that. I've got this really nicely tuned. It's flying really well at this point in time. Motors are staying very reasonable, even though I just flew it out. It's almost like 120. It's like 118 out. Motors did not fry. No problems like that. The board itself is running hot, but I'm also blocking airflow. I've got this big old open logger taped onto the top of the board. And then we're also blocking airflow by using the battery strap or that fuzz. I think what we want to do is shave off the fuzz on the one side to give more airflow underneath the board. But I'm guessing if you're not flying at 115, temperature is going to be zero issue for you. What else? Talked about the overclock. Yeah, so with the overclocking, I'm a little bit, it's always tough to kind of prove things, whether the logging is causing the problem. Because if you're not logging, you can't see how it's running, so it kind of has a little problem. I'm kind of wondering if the thing to do is not just overclock this board out of the gate a little bit, to just give yourself a little bit more headroom and stay out of that, because it does make a difference. It was definitely, you could feel the difference when this wasn't flying, when the CPU was overloaded. I was kind of like, I was honestly like a little, it didn't fly like garbage. It was flyable, but it was just missing something. I was like, I don't know if this is it. I don't know if I want to put my time and effort to finishing out the frame and all, because it just wasn't quite there to where it was making me, excited to fly. It was like where I wanted to fly it. But once I overclocked it started flying really well. Now, if you're not logging and stuff like that, do you need to overclock it? I don't know. Probably not, but you've got options with the overclocking. There's like 170. There's like 3 steps to it. There's 3 or 4 options, and I would say just overclock it 1 bump, and you're probably fine. I checked with Ryan Quillette. He wasn't sure if overclocking is fine or whether it caused any stability issues. I'm not seeing anything weird, so I don't know. We'll find out. Now, in terms of, is there a place for this quad? Because the camera, although I think the picture quality is very good, very, very good from what you're flying, but is the flight experience, so I'm flying both of these on the same battery, same 250 or 550 battery 2S, and on the 2.5 inch props, even though it is 20 grams lighter, I don't get a ton of huge difference in in flight time. And a lot of that is because on the 3-inch quad, we're flying 3-inch blades. So, carrying the Nano 90, that's why I went up to 3-inch props. So, the big thing about these, really where the place comes in, it is a smaller quad and it weighs less. You're going to drop 20 grams. So you're going to be flying at 70 grams all up weight for the 2.5 inch versus the Touring is going to be 90 grams all up weight. So it's a difference. It makes a difference. And the punch out is better on the 2.5. Now, clearly with the bigger Touring quad, you hit it with 3S or something else, it's going to punch out harder for sure. But at where it's at, flying on the same battery with 2S, the 2.5 inch build has a better punch out. Also has a better flight time. On the 2.5 inch build, I'm getting like a good 4 minutes, 30 seconds up to 5 minutes. Interestingly, a little bit less than the analog build. I have seen that before with some new like all-in-one boards with like the Nuba drone in particular, where flight times were down a little bit, couldn't fully explain it. I'm checking the ESCs in terms of like they're spinning up the motors all the same RPM, nothing funny that way. But one of the things I do see on the all-in-one 15 board is you need to push the idle value up quite a bit higher, almost double than what I'm using on the old Flywoo board. And it's a little bit out of line with some of the other boards. It seems like you need to get a higher idle value to get the same, kind of just idle RPM on the quad. And whether it's something about the ESCs or something about running all the juice you need to run Express LRS and, well, not really Express LRS because we're running ELRS on both of them, but there's something about running HDZero digital, maybe drawing more than the analog. Is it enough to explain the difference? I don't know. Is it something about maybe the board heats up more, losing efficiency, but something, probably losing about like, not a ton, it's like 30 seconds of flight time, but it seems repeatable, where on the analog, I'm getting better flight time on of it. That I don't think is just explainable just by the weight difference, because with the digital build, when I first was flying it, I had it built up on the old Warpig frame, not using the battery strap, and before I threw the logger on it, it was actually slightly lighter than analog build, and the flight time was still a little bit less than the analog build, which was a little bit interesting. But it's not so much less that I think if you're considering these two sort of style of builds, the picture quality on the digital build is so much better that unless like price is the thing that's like determining your purchase, which it might be, and if it is, that's fine. But unless price is like the ultimate factor here, I don't see much room for the analog anymore. So analog on whoops, like 65mm little tiny quads, 100%, I think analog's still the way to go. But once you're flying outdoors and things like that, and you're bumping up into 2.5 inch props, 100%, I think this digital HDZero system is the way to go by far with this all-in-one. This really unlocks decent camera quality into smaller builds. And you can go smaller than this. I think you can drop down into the 2-inch size, and it's light enough. I think you can get down into 2-inch size, and you can still build quads that fly great. So I think that's really fun. That's kind of exciting to me. This is my preferred size. This is a 114mm motor mount. This is my favorite size for quads for the backyard. It gives me enough stability but locked in to where it just flies really well. And pretty much everything about this is pretty ideal. The only thing I could say is like sub-ideal is just that it's not a 90 frame per second camera, but couldn't do it. Couldn't build 90 frame per second build down into this weight. Just can't do it. So I think both of the quads have room. I think the Nano 90 build is excellent, and I can fly to my backyard, but it is a different, slightly bigger, chunkier, heavier experience. And the all-in-one 15 with the Lux camera is a really compelling thing. It flies really well, it looks really good. So I'll be finishing up some of those frame details, kind of working those out, and get it released pretty soon. And when I get it released, there'll be a tune and everything to go with it, so that if you want to replicate the build, you'll be good to go without having to do much work other than obviously building it up. One other thing I want to do at some point when I get around to it is try the Beta FPV motors. They also have an 1104, slightly lower kV that's reported at 7,000 kV. So I'd be curious to see the performance difference, whether it's noticeable or not. I think this one's going long enough. I think I'll leave off the black box stuff. I think I'll do a separate stuff to go through some of the black box things I was seeing and go through that separately. All right, till next time, cheers.